Multiplying with Fractions, Part 2. Jeff Simpson, MasteryLearningSystems.com. This video deals with problems like this. That's multiplying proper fractions with other proper fractions. Pictures are helpful in understanding fractions. So, here are some pictures to help you learn about multiplying fractions times fractions. Imagine a pan of brownies, and imagine that half of it is gone, and that you get to keep half of it. Then you decide to give half of your half to a friend. Okay, so we cut that half in half and give away part of it. You now have part of a pan of brownies. But what fraction is it? If you draw some lines, you can see that you have 1/4 of a pan of brownies. One-fourth is the same as, well, it's not the same as a half, but it is the same as half of a half. Half of a half. Of is an important word in this situation. That's right, of. Of means to multiply. For example, 2 of these, that would be 2 5s. 2 times 5. Of and times both mean to multiply. 3 of these, 3 10s. 3 times 10. Again, of times multiply. 3 of these, well, that's 1/4, another 1/4, another, there you got 3 of them. 3 times 1/4 is 3/4. Half of a half, then, mathematically we can say is 1/2 times 1/2. 1/2 of this half here, there we go, half of a half. Mathematically, we write it as 1/2 times 1/2, and we know from the picture that that is 1/4. Someone invented a clever way of dealing with this. You multiply the top numbers, that's the numerator times the numerator, so 1 times 1 is 1. And then you multiply the bottom numbers, that's the denominator times the denominator. That's 2 times 2 gives you 4. And we know from the picture that this is true. 1/2 times 1/2, or 1/2 of 1/2, is definitely 1/4. Let's look at another example. Imagine a pan of brownies cut into 3 equal parts. And you get to keep 1/3 of it. Well, okay, those are gone. So you get to keep 1/3. Then you decide to give half of your third to a friend. So we're going to do something with that third now. Cut it in half and give away some. And what do you have left? Well, you have half of a third. So you got part of a pan of brownies, but what fraction is it? Well, we know it's a half of a third, but that's not a normal name for a fraction. If you draw another line, cutting all the thirds in half, you can see that you have 1/6 of a pan of brownies. 1/6 is the same as 1/2 of 1/3. Half of a third, well, that will become 1/2 times 1/3. 1/2 of this third is 1/6, and the math shows that. 1/2 times 1/3 is 1/6. Now we multiply the top numbers, that's the numerators. Then we multiply the denominators. 1/6. 1/2 times 1/3 is 1/6, and we know from the picture that this is also true. Here's 1/2 of 1/3. 1/6. Here's a similar problem that we can work the same way. 1/2 times 1/4. Well, of course, you start by multiplying the numerators, and then the denominators. 2 times 4 is 8. 1/2 of 1/4 should be 1/8 according to the math. So here's a picture of 1/4. Now we'll take a half of that fourth. There we go. Well, it's not a fourth anymore. It's a half of a fourth, which actually is 1/8. The picture proves that half of 1/4 is 1/8. Here's another problem to practice on. 1/2 times 1/5. That gives us 1/10. Now let's make a picture of 1/2 of 1/5. So we got a pan there with 5 sections. So there's 1/5. Now we take half of that fifth, draw the extra line, and we can see that it definitely is 1/10. And the picture shows that half of 1/5 is 1/10. We've already looked at 1/2 times 1/3. Let's switch the numbers around and see what that looks like. Here's what I mean. Instead of 1/2 starting, let's start with 1/3. And then we'll do 1/3 times 1/2. Well, how is that different? Look at the picture. We're going to do 1/3 of that half there. How do you do that? Well, it's a half right now, but we're going to cut it into 3 parts. And then get rid of a couple of them. Now we have 1/3 of 1/2. Draw the extra lines. 1/3 times 1/2 equals 1/6. Let's do some comparing. Up above, we're going to do 1/3 of 1/2, and down below, we'll do 1/2 of 1/3. And then we'll compare the results. Okay, up above, we've got our half. It's already cut into 3 sections. And there's 1/3 of 1/2. Draw the extra lines, and we can see that that is 1/6. 1/3 times 1/2 is 1/6. Now down below, 1/2 of 1/3. So we take half of that third there, half of a third, draw the extra line, and that also is 1/6. 1/2 times 1/3 is 1/6. Look carefully at the picture. You'll see that the products are the same. Both of them come out to 1/6, but the pictures are slightly different. Yeah, this is an example of the commutative property. Here are the problems we've worked so far. Notice all the numerators, all the numbers up on top, are 1s. Well, we should do a problem where one of the numerators is not a 1. For example, 1/2 times 2/3. We've got a 2 up there in the numerator's place. So here's a picture of 1/2 of 2/3. So we start with 3 sections. 1/3 is brown, and another third is brown. That is 2/3. Now we'll take half of that third, and half of that third, and draw the extra line. Look at this. 1/6, 1/6. Turns out to be, that is 2/6. Let's look at the math. 1/2 times 2/3. We'll multiply the numerators on top. 1 times 2 is 2. And then multiply the denominators on the bottom. 2 times 3 is 6. Look at that, 2/6, just like it shows in the picture. Hey, we're rearranging. Look, one of those 6 just got moved. We're taking out a line. Doesn't look like 2/6 anymore. It looks like 1/3. Haha! So 2/6 is actually the same as 1/3. Now if you take 2/6 and you divide by 2, divide by 2, 2 divided by 2 is 1, 6 divided by 2 is 3, there you go, 1/3. We just reduced that fraction, or simplified it, by dividing, showing that 2/6 is actually equal to 1/3, just like we saw in the picture. Here's another problem where one of the numerators is not 1. So this time we have a 3 up there for our numerator. So here's a picture of 1/2 of 3/4. So here's 4 sections, and 1/4 is brown, another 1/4, that's 2/4 so far. We need one more. There we go, 3/4. Okay, we've got 3/4. Now, how will we show half of that? Well, we'll take half of the first 1/4. Now it's not a 1/4 anymore, it's half of a 1/4. And we'll do the same thing with the next one. And it is also half of a 1/4. And the last one, also, that is 1/2 of 1/4. If we count all the parts now, we can see 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, that makes 3/8. Let's look at the math. 1/2 times 3/4, in other words, 1/2 of 3/4. We multiply the numerators on top. 1 times 3 is 3, and then multiply the denominators on the bottom. 2 times 4 is 8, 3/8, just as the picture shows. You just saw what 1/2 of 3/4 looks like. Let's take a look at 1/3 of 3/4. Okay, our picture down below, we have 3/4 already. How will we show 1/3 of that? Let's see. We'll cut all the colored sections into 3 parts each. We'll take 1/3 of that 1/4. Now it is 1/3 of 1/4. We'll do the same with the next 1/4. It is also 1/3 of 1/4. And we'll do it again. That is now 1/3 of 1/4. Let's draw the extra lines in and count all the parts. What do we have here? 1/12, 1/12, 1/12. Looks like 3/12. Let's look at the math. 1/3 times 3/4. 1 times 3 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. 3/12. Now watch the picture. We're going to rearrange the colored parts. You see how that one just got moved down? Now we're going to move the other one. We'll get rid of some of those lines. And look what it looks like now. Looks like 1/4. So does that mean that 3/12 is the same as 1/4? Yes, it does. Let's reduce. 3/12 divided by 3 divided by 3. We're going to reduce again by dividing. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. There you go, 1/4. 3/12 does equal 1/4. You just saw what 1/3 of 3/4 looks like. Now let's take a look at 2/3 of 3/4. So here's a picture now of 2/3 of 3/4. Well, we already are showing 3/4 down below there. How will we do 2/3 of that? Well, we'll cut each colored section into 3 parts. Then we'll take 2/3 of that 1/4. Well, it's not 1/4 anymore. It's 2/3 of 1/4. And we'll do the same thing again. And that is also 2/3 of 1/4. And again, 2/3 of 1/4. Let's draw the extra lines in. And we see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/12. 6/12. Let's look at the math now. 2/3 times 3/4. Multiply the numerator times the numerator. 2 times 3 is 6. And the denominator times the denominator. 3 times 4 is 12. 6/12, just as it shows in the picture. Now, we should rearrange some of these colored sections. Put them in a different place. There, we've moved that one. Now we're going to move another one. Take the labels away. It's easier to see what we've got. Take some of those extra lines away. Look at that. Looks like 1/2. It is 1/2. 6/12 is actually the same as 1/2. 6/12. We'll divide each number by 6, because we're simplifying by dividing. So we divide 6 by 6, and that gives us 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. 1/2, 1/2. Well, that's all for the part 2 video. Thanks for watching my video. Please share these ideas with other people who can benefit from them.